Hi, and welcome again. And here is the next of our leadership takeaways. And here with me today is Dan Blanchard. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. And how are you?
Super, thank you.
And again, I'm very pleased that Dan, again, is another author, speaker, and actually a teacher this time, and from America, and he's from Connecticut. So a lot of my leadership takeaways are from people and leaders residing in America. So I'm very happy to have you here today, Dan.
Cool, I'm very happy to be here, Rachel, and looking forward to spending some time with you.
And the dog's happy as well. And just to introduce Dan Blanchard, as well as being, as I say, a teacher and a speaker, he's an author of Granddaddy's Secrets, which there's 3: Feeling Good, Feeling Strong, and The Storm. So go look those up to find out more about what Dan does. So without further ado, I will get into the main part of leadership takeaways. And the first section we look at, Dan, is strategy. And again, as I always say to people, this goes off 1,000 different ways depending on the person I'm speaking to. But for you, when starting out in life and, you know, growing up, was there a clear strategy? Because for some people there is a clear strategy in your kind of way forward. Because I know that you were a 2-time Olympic wrestling champion, and you touched on, when I watched one of your YouTube videos, that you're growing up in an area where you did kind of get beaten up and you had to stand up for yourself. So it's great personal development right there when you were a kid of, I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm going to fight adversity. So was there a clear strategy when all of that was going on for you, Dan?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Rachel. And I don't think that there was a clear strategy. I was just a little boy trying to survive in the inner city, you know, and, you know, living in a rough home and in poverty and all that stuff. So I didn't even know what to think of it all. So I kind of don't think that there was a strategy. But one of the things, you know, just kind of one thing leads to another sometimes, Rachel. And as you had just mentioned, like, you know, I had to kind of fight to survive and stand up for myself. And one of the things that I loved doing was watching sports, like on TV and playing sports. So to me, sports became like the outlet, and sports became the strategy. And sports became the place where I could start to feel good about myself and start to achieve a little success and make friendships, you know, learn teamwork and learn a lot, you know, perseverance and showing up early and staying late. And the whole thing about what you put into it is what you get out of it. You know, if you don't put the effort in, you don't get anything out. So I think that was something that just somehow, you know, went into me. And somehow kept beating me over the head that this was the way of the world with sports. And, you know, I wasn't doing very well in school, Rachel, or any of those other things. But sports was the thing that kind of taught me how to win more often and how to be successful more often. And then it took me a long time to be able to, like, put that or transfer that over to other aspects of my life. And then it took even longer for me to be able to figure out how to, let's say, articulate that and explain that to people, that was kind of the strategy, even though I had no idea that was the strategy at the time. And it took a lot of years of introspection and reflection and looking back to say, you know what, that was the strategy that kind of like banged me over the head a million times. And then sooner or later, I got it. That was it. You know, those are the sort of things, the lessons that you learn in sports can help you become more successful in the real world.
Yeah, so you were saying it was obviously the comradeship, and it was great. It was obviously providing you the motivation when you were not enjoying other things. But what do you think really about the sport? Was it the fact that you were just good at it and you felt fulfilled, or what was the?
No, I think, Rachel, the secret to sports is something that, like, our youth today is lacking. And maybe not just our youth, but maybe all of us, like in this microwave and remote control society, is the whole thing about effort. Okay, that effort is like everything. Effort's the number one thing. And if you outwork your competition, then chances are sooner or later you're going to be able to beat your competition and you're going to be able to become more successful. So again, like, you know, one of the sports that I really enjoyed, I played a lot of them and enjoyed a lot of them, but one that I really enjoyed was wrestling. And I had a lot of success in wrestling because it was just me against my opponent. There was no team to hide behind, no excuses, no blaming somebody else. It was just me against my opponent. And whoever had worked harder and deserved it more, earned it more, was usually the one that won the match in the end. You know, the one that did not give up when the going got tough. That was the one that usually won in the end. So I think that right there became like the ultimate secret of the whole effort thing. Of, you know, and I joke sometimes. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So I joke sometimes that sometimes, you know, I got to do things 2 or 3 times when other people maybe only do it once. But with that 2 or 3 times, or if it takes me 4 times of doing it, I usually find myself winning. You know, whereas somebody maybe only does it once, finds out that they find themselves maybe losing to me who's done it 4 times. And, you know, and the reason why is because I'm willing to do it 4 times. Whereas most people are only willing to do it once, maybe twice. You know, so they're just not going to put in the amount of effort that I did. And that's where I learned that in sports. The more effort I put into sports, the more successful I became. And that correlates, it transitions very nicely over to life. You know, the more effort you put into life, the more successful you're going to be.
And I'm sure as a teacher, you know, because I know having a 16-year-old son and 13-year-old daughter, that although we know all this good stuff, if you put in the hard work, there's no point us preaching at people going, oh, you know, you can't, you know, the kind of social media age, you're all lazy, you all expect quick results. And we kind of know all this, but I've learned the hard way, you know, 3-4 years ago when I learned all these amazing secrets about coaching. It's no point trying to shove it down someone's mouth if they're not either ready for it or that it comes across as you being judgmental. There's an element of compassion needed. So how do you find as a teacher of that kind of piece?
I agree with you fully, Rachel, on that. And basically what happens is you find yourself lecturing to these kids that are not putting forth the effort, whether they're your students, your athletes, or your own children, or the neighborhood kids, you know, whatever. You find yourself lecturing. And when you start lecturing to them, they turn you off and they don't pay attention to you. Or sometimes they try to do the exact opposite. So the couple of things that I found that works is what I do is I always try to build relationships with the youth. You know what I'm saying? Spend that time with them, building that relationships, and they'll open their ears a little wider for you to listen, you know, for them to listen to you. The other thing I always try to do is I always try to do what's called inspirational leadership. And I don't think I made that up, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. So I always try to inspire the youth. Again, whether they're my students, my children, or my athletes, or the neighborhood kids, whatever, I always try to inspire them, because I feel that if they get inspired and they start digging deep into themselves and start realizing that, you know, that this is going to make their lives better, you know, they're gonna dig deep maybe and start trying instead of tuning you out with a lecture. You know, so definitely inspiring them. You know, and that could be through stories. It could be through you know, great anecdotes. It could be the way you talk to them. But most importantly, it's through what you do in front of them, your actions and behaviors. You know, like the role model you are. So like my youth, you know, again, whether they're my students, you know, my children, whatever, athletes, neighborhood kids, they always see me getting there early. You know, they always see me working hard all the way through and, you know, not taking the easy way out. You know, they see me staying late. You know, I remember like when I was coaching my athletes, and it started there because I was a coach before I was a teacher and before I was a parent. Athletes, you know, they saw me run every sprint that they ran, and they saw me near the front, you know, running every sprint, every mile. They saw me lifting every weight that they were lifting. You know, they saw me doing every hit, you know, or every wrestling move, you know, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to create almost like a superhero in their midst, somebody where they want to emulate, somebody that inspired them. And they said, if I do what he does, I'll be like him. I'll become him. Well, that's the whole inspirational leadership. And I suppose there's a lot of different ways to do that, but we've all heard the old saying of, you know, actions speak louder than words. You know, you got to be good with your words, and you got to be able to, you know, not just like try to impress kids, you know, but press upon them with the importance of your words and how important it is for them to step up. But even more so, they've got to look at your actions and see, you know, that there's a reason for them to step up. You know, you got to inspire them through what you do. So that means you got to outwork everybody, you know, and then your students or your youth, you know, your athletes, who have your own children, you know, they will, you know, become inspired at your work ethic and say, you know what, I'd like to have a little bit of what he or she has. And it looks like the secret to that is through the effort and the hard work. So that's how you inspire them. So again, relationships, you know, and through inspirational leadership, I think is the best way to go. Lectures don't go too far these days.
Yeah, and I think even the inspirational leadership just comes down to being a real version of yourself, but performing as the best version of yourself, like you say, being one step ahead of the game, and people will respect and respond to that, and you will be a role model. And it's because sometimes when you say inspiration, people might think of Kim Kardashian or somebody who's really famous or beautiful or whatever. And I think to be that inspiration is just being the best version of yourself, and people get it, and it's amazing. And I've lived and breathed this in learning to become a coach and be a good coach. Is you're right, you do get out there, you do the actions, you do your homework, and then you need to speak less then, because you just realize it's all within you, and people read you like a barcode. I always say they barcode you and they bleep you as soon as you come into a room, and they will know whether you're authentic, you do what you say you do, and you're as good as you say you are, even less by the words you say, but the way you are, and even by the way you say a few words, that they will, children know, adults know. And I like you say, I think that's the key.
Absolutely. And I like how you said the best version of yourself, because being the best version of yourself not only makes you happier, you know, but it's contagious. You know, when people see you being the best version of yourself, like they want to be around you. You know, it's sort of like a magnet. And then that's like, you know, and that just kind of feeds itself. When people want to be around you, when they like being around you, you know, then you want to try even harder to continue to be even a better than best version of yourself. You just always want to keep improving. As long as you keep improving, you're going to be like a magnet to people, and people are going to want to be around you. And then you have the chance, you know, to do some real change, positive change in this world, when people want to be around you because they're inspired by you. You know, it's funny, Rachel, I was just recently in Washington, D.C. I was asked to come speak to the nation's teachers about some of the things I do with children, you know, especially with difficult students. And an old friend of mine, who is a Ugandan princess, happened to be in Washington, D.C. on that same day. And we met for dinner that night and hung out and talked. And, you know, we both only had about an hour. So we hung out. And when it was all over, she posted up on Facebook, you know, Mr. Blanchard, it was so nice seeing you again. You're still very energetic, positive, and warm. You know, and I was like, that makes a huge difference. You know, when you're positive, energetic, and warm to people, you're including them, you're building those relationships with them. You're being kind. You know, unfortunately, I'm seeing too much of the opposite these days, where people aren't being kind, but they're always, you know, trying to be like sarcastic and rude and get one up on you, try to beat you out in a way. And I'd like to clarify that, Rachel. Like when I talked about sports, you know, and how, you know, how to win. Well, winning doesn't mean that you like get something at somebody else's expense. You know, I don't really call that winning. You know, some people call my philosophy like a win-win, you know, where you help others win. And if you help others win, then you win too. You know, it really is a win-win. So I'm not talking about what you've seen on TV with this crazy reality TV stuff about how I'm stabbing you in the back and lying and whatever else to win. You know, that's not the winning that I'm talking about here. You know, in wrestling, I never cheated to win in wrestling. You know, in football, I never cheated to win in football or any of those sports that I did. I never cheated to win. So I think that what I'm seeing today, like out in society and especially on TV, in the media, about people cheating and lying and stealing and stabbing people in the back to win, that's not winning. You know, and so I think we need to, you know, make people cognizant of that and bring awareness to that you can be positive, energetic, and warm and help other people win. And when you do that, you win too. You know, some of my happiest moments, Rachel, was when I was watching my students do better in school and win. When I was watching my athletes, you know, win. You know, I just got goosebumps down my back just thinking about that and talking about that, Rachel. So that's the kind of winning I'm talking about.
I agree. And I think there's almost more fulfillment when you see someone else succeed, because my son's just done his GCSEs and we've just received 5 of his 9 grades, and he was predicted D's and E's, and we've worked together over the last couple of years, and now he's got A's, B's and C's. So, and he's so happy, but the fulfillment you get, like you say, when you support other people is even greater, is even better feeling. So, because you win and they win as well, and it's great. So, but what would you say, just moving on, talking about the whole teacher and author and what you write about, what would you say arms you with strengths, with your strengths and weaknesses, and again, I think weakness is great to talk about, because you talk about, you know, falling down and picking yourself up and that resilience. So what are your strengths and weaknesses to support you being the best teacher and author?
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. I think one of the things that helps me discover my strengths and weaknesses, and helps me discover, let's say, better ways of reaching my best version where I can help others become, hopefully, their best version, is, you know, reading and talking to people like you, Rachel. You know, I spend a lot of time reading about successful people, what they've done, you know, and I've learned a lot from them, and I spend a lot of time trying to talk to whoever I can about what makes them tick and what helps them be successful. So those sort of things, you know, are huge between reading and talking to people. So going back to, like, I guess, my strengths. Again, I guess one of my strengths has always been my effort. I've always had an incredible work ethic, and part of it came from, you know, growing up in the inner city and living a life that I did not want to live. And, you know, I just wanted so badly to get out of that life and have a better life. And I was willing to, you know, work until my fingers to the bone, you know, until my back broke to get a better life. So mine has always been effort. And the other thing is that I've always liked people, you know, which is very, very important in this world. And I know it's a tough world out there. And I know not everybody you meet's nice, you know, but for somehow over the years, I've always liked people. I've always been optimistic, you know, about people and about life. You know, in high school, my senior superlative was most optimistic. So go figure, right? So those are my strengths, you know, and because I've always been optimistic, and because I've always liked people, I've always been willing to work hard to try to help people, you know, live a better life in this world, be a better place for all of us. You know, one feeds the other. You know, the harder I work, Rachel, the more optimistic I become, and the more, you know, I like people. You know, and I'm not blind. I mean, I know that there's people out there that aren't nice, but for a lot of them, there's probably a good reason, you know, why they're not nice. Maybe they grew up in a really bad home, you know what I'm saying? And maybe they're just crying out loud for help. There's a lot of reasons why some people are not nice people. But those are my strengths. Now my weaknesses, you know, there's obviously several, and I try to manage my weaknesses the best I can, but I don't spend a ton of time on my weaknesses, because my time is better spent on my strengths. You know, and sometimes my weaknesses actually come out to be a strength. Like one, I mentioned to you earlier, Rich, I never considered myself to be the smartest guy in the room. You know, I grew up in the inner city, grew up in a dysfunctional home. You know, I was lucky to get C's going through school. So, you know, I never got high scores on tests. But in a way, like, that weakness has become a strength, you know, because that weakness motivated me to, like, keep learning and to keep reading books and to keep going to school and keep trying to better myself. You know, I'm sure I've read over 1,000 books. It's not a lot of people can say, you know. I've gone to 14 years. I've completed 14 years of college, earned 7 degrees. And, you know, some people say that's amazing. Like, my 5th degree was my doctorate's equivalent. And I've got 2 more degrees after that. So I got 14 years, 7 degrees, over 1,000 books I've read. You know, I've written multiple books. So some people would call me, like, intelligent. I still don't think I'm super intelligent. And that gives me the motivation to keep going and to keep trying to become more intelligent and more knowing about what goes on in this world and how to help people. So, you know, that's definitely a weakness, is that I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the room, but that weakness, I've worked on it and I've turned it around to be a strength in some ways. And as you have said, Rachel, as we were talking earlier, you know, because of that, I talk and speak in a very simple way. But that simple way is like a profound way, which, you know, some people can recognize as a genius. You know, the genius lies in the simplicity many times. So that's definitely one of my weaknesses. Now, if I throw another weakness in there, my wife always tells me that one of my weaknesses is that I'm not very observant. You know, I don't always notice stuff and see things and hear things. And I'm always like, well, you women are better at that than us men anyways, you know. But that is definitely one of the areas I need to be better at. You know, I'm not very observant. I miss things. I don't see some things I should see. I don't hear some things I should hear. Sometimes I forget names of people that I met. And I'm like, what was that person? I'm always asking my wife, you know, what was that person's name again? My wife always knows, you know. But lots of times I forget. So, you know, I do have those weaknesses. But, you know, they haven't been anything that's helped me back from being successful. So I think, Rachel, in a nutshell, I mean, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So I would say don't let your weaknesses kick you in the butt and drag you down and make you feel bad and keep you from, you know, being your best version. You know, manage your weaknesses and really work on your strengths. And, you know, and if you don't know what your strengths are, start thinking about the things that you like. Like I like sports, you know, but I'm not a professional football player, professional athlete. You know, there was other things in the sports that I really liked that ended up becoming my strengths. And they can become your strengths too. It might take some time to recognize them, but they can become your strength too. So look for the things you like, you know, figure out what the strengths are that lie within that realm, work on those strengths, spend a lot of time improving those strengths and manage your weaknesses, you know, and just keep liking people. Keep liking people and you're going to be all right.
Totally brilliant. Yeah, totally agree with you. I think it's just being aware of those weaknesses, like you say, managing those, because they'll always pop up to bite you. And, you know, I've learned as a coach that a lot of people look to coaching to change themselves and fix themselves. There's no fixing going on. It's just about maximizing who you are. You can't totally just wipe out a part of you, you know, like cut your arm off or something. So you're totally right. It's being aware of that, but then focus on the good and what you can maximize. So I'm totally on board with you.
Absolutely, Rachel. And to throw, you know, to add to that vein, I would say you don't want to cut off your arm or cut off your weakness or cut off a part of your life, because that's what makes you who you are. You know, the fact, I mean, you know, I would love to go back and say, I wish I wasn't born in poverty in the north end of Hartford. You know, I wish I didn't live in that terrible, terrible neighborhood where my family was the only white neighborhood in the family, you know, in the neighborhood, and we got beat up all the time. You know, I wish those things didn't happen. I wish my father, you know, wasn't an abusive alcoholic. You know, I wish my brothers weren't, my younger brother, my older brother weren't dead. You know, I could always say, I wish this, I wish that. But in the end, Rachel, those hardships have put the kind of pressure on you to create that diamond that you'll become. You know, that those hardships, those things that maybe you could want to wish away, those are the things that have made you who you are, who have made you unique, who have made you authentic. And that is the person that the other people out there can relate to and want to, you know, like, let's say, latch onto or be a part of. You know what I'm saying? They don't want somebody who's perfect, because that perfect, like, isn't real. You know what I'm saying? They want somebody with flaws. You know, and if you notice, like, when I was a kid, Rachel, like, I used to watch Superman and the League of Justice and the Superman and his friends and all that stuff. And back in those days, like, all the superheroes were, like, perfect. You know, but as the years went by, you know, you started seeing flaws in the superheroes, because that's what people relate to more, is that they want you to be human. They want you to have those flaws, and then they'll trust you and want to be a part of what you are. But if you're perfect, you know, there's something wrong. I can't trust somebody who's perfect. Why not? So I'd say, you know, don't wish away those parts of your life that aren't perfect. And one final note on this. I wish Hollywood hadn't gone so far, the superheroes, though, because they've kind of made our superheroes in some ways almost seem like bad guys. They're doing like a little teeny bit of that. And our superheroes are not bad guys. They're good guys with flaws, you know, or a good woman with flaws. That's what our superheroes are. So I kind of would wish Hollywood would kind of come back a little bit, or swing the pendulum back a little bit to, you know, they're not bad guys. Batman's not a bad guy. You know, Superman's not a bad guy. You know, they're good guys. You know, they're good guys with flaws. So I would say that's what we're looking for. That's the hero inside of each and every one of us. You know, we're all superheroes. We all wear capes that we can't see. And we've all got something to share, flaws, scars, and all.
Yeah. And some of the Marvel's characters are more my favorites than others. Like, I love Thor with his mallet thing, and he's just gorgeous. So if he wants to turn up in my neighborhood and be single, and date me, that's fine. He'll be my good guy. So yeah.
I hear you, Rachel.
For sure. So moving on to the third section, we look at resources, and this I've spoken to different people who maybe have bigger companies, so they've got different departments and lots of staff and you know, manufacturing processes, and obviously yourself and I, you know, we're in the more consultative services and work one-on-one with people, and we don't produce any products. But what would you say the resources are that arm you to be the best of what you can be? And I think you have touched on it by the reading that you do and talking to great people. Is there anything else that kind of goes into your daily processes that you resort that supports you?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. And I talk about this and write about this from time to time. And it's such a hidden gems. It's a hidden secret that people are overlooking. Way too many people are overlooking this. And one of the resources that I've been using for years is our free public library. Now, I know that may sound too simple to some people, but again, the genius lies in the simplicity, right? I mean, I'm a school teacher. You know, I make a school teacher's paycheck. I got 5 children of my own at home. So, you know, there's not much time and not much, you know, an abundance of money in my life. So I started a long time ago going to the free public library and reading every single book I could get my hand on about successful people, which I kind of mentioned earlier. You know, and of course I also read this section 158, which is the psychology section, which is again about people. You know, the psychology of winning, the psychology of goal setting. You know, there's all sorts of psychology books in section 158 in the library that's free. You can just check it out and read them and learn a lot about human nature. You know,
and I agree. Sorry to roll that on like one step further, and I do get you, but I think it'd be nice for us to demonstrate to people. My library is YouTube, and then I follow people, and then I find out who they follow, and then the trail just goes, like you say, in a big library, you read one book and then it recommends another book. So that's my library. But for us to demonstrate to people listening, and when they read this, and I do my follow-up sections where I minutize all the interesting points that you make, what then does it then give you once you've got this knowledge? Like, for example, what I then do is I absorb some of the facts and things that hook on to my values and what I believe makes great coaching, and it starts to expand my coaching, and then it allows me to invent new habits and behaviors that I can use daily. And so what then does that information then turn into that makes you a more effective, fun, fulfilled? How do you use that information is basically what I wanting to know. What do you do daily? Like, do you meditate? Do you go have 10 minutes with the dog somewhere? What do you do that
I'm glad you brought that up, Rachel, because I'm going to give you a quick little sequence. When I first started doing this library thing, it eventually does lead to the internet, which what you're saying, you know, reading everything that you can read and YouTube and all that stuff. But when I started off, one of my mottos was that readers are leaders. You know what I'm saying? So I was trying to read everything I could. I did that for years. And then I figured out I had to do something beyond just reading, because just reading is not enough. You got to do something beyond that. So then I came up with the motto of that writers are fighters. So what I took was I grabbed whatever knowledge I was gaining from reading, and I started writing. You know, and you can write a blog. And now what you're doing is you're doing a thing that the psychologists called metacognition. You're actually thinking about your thinking, which is one of the most powerful success tools you can have when you're writing, you know, writing about what you read. So you write about what you read, and you're thinking about your thinking. And writing slows the whole thinking process down enough for you to actually see it on the page, because when you think about your thinking, it goes, woo, it's all over the place. You know, and unless you're somebody like Socrates, I can't think and hold my thoughts still long enough to really think about my thinking. But the whole tool of writing, that strategy of writing, has enabled me to think about my thinking, which is a huge success strategy. And, you know, then I started writing books. I started writing newspaper columns. You know, I started writing blogs. And the more and more I started writing this stuff, then and thinking about my thinking and thinking about how this stuff applies, you know, now it's time to take it to the next level and not just apply it in the, like, say, the virtual world or the print world, but now you got to start applying it to human beings. So now when I start talking to people, you know, and start helping people, whatever it may be, whether it's coaching, you know, whether it's speaking in front of a large audience or consulting or whatever it is, you know, now when I'm talking out loud and saying things, like, I sound like my thinking from my reading and from my discussions, you know, with people like you, Rachel. And it just keeps feeding. It's just a whole big cycle of you're talking to people, you're reading, you're applying it, you're writing it, you're thinking about your thinking, you're writing it, you're saying these things out loud that have come from deep thought, you know, from writing. Now you're taking it a step farther and you're going into the community, and whether you're volunteering at things to try to make your community a better place, whether you're a youth coach, you know, whether you're the PTO president, you know, or whatever, you know, wherever you're volunteering. And then you find yourself eventually bringing it into, like, your work, you know. And for me, it was easy as a teacher and coach into work, but you don't have to be a teacher or coach to bring these things into work and start making lives around you better and start making your life more fun, more friendly, you know, all those sort of things. So I know I just said a whole lot, Rachel, but to go back real quick and just sum it up. Again, readers are leaders, so read a lot. And then writers are fighters. So start writing so you can start thinking about your reading and start thinking about your thinking. And then that's not enough. Then you take it up to the next step and take that to human beings, real live human beings standing in front of you, you know, beyond the pages of a book or, you know, the blog or a website or whatever else. So I think that whole sequence has been, I think, dynamite for me. You know, it's been awesome. I've grown so much, Rachel, through that sequence or through that process, and I've helped so many people in return, and it's sort of like one hand washing the other, and it's a nice place to be. You know, so I encourage everybody to try to at least think about what I'm saying, you know, and try it, give it a shot. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how the quality of your life improves through this process.
And thank you for sharing that with us. And I totally agree with you. And there'll be a lot of people who won't necessarily try it. But even if people can just take from this that at the end of every day, a lot of people diarize what's happened in their day, or they do a gratitude calendar and write something they're thankful. And then there's a lot of people, like you say, who don't even think about their thoughts. And that's fine too. There's no right or wrong. But if you want to be a better version of yourself, I totally agree with you that is probably one of the instrumental things that will allow you to be a better version of yourself, because you can only do that by, like you say, assessing what you're taking in through your eyes and ears, what you're listening to, what you're reading, putting in the quality stuff, putting in the people who you aspire to, then thinking about it, thinking about how it fits into, because I do the same as you, I invent systems in my head of where that information goes, and then how it makes sense to me and how I can use it and how I can then recreate what I do and learn more. And then, like you say, then go and talk to people, and I go and blog and stuff and tell them about what you've learned that will help them. But not everyone will do that, but I think, and even if we tell them, it will make you a better person. But yeah, just if some, you know, people out there do want to give it a try, just write a few thoughts down at the end of the day of what you did today, or what, you know, what you were grateful for, or just a good place to start if you don't want to go into all the books and writing and blogging.
I hear you, Rachel. And I would say for those people who think that might sound like too much work and don't want to do that, I would say, well, then maybe start off with a different strategy. Maybe your strategy can be to just be kind human in this world. Just be kind, you know, to all living things. You know, walk through the world and be kind to people and slow down a little bit and listen to people. You know, one of the things I do, Rachel, besides teaching and coaching, is that I'm also a dad. You know, I got 5 kids, and I have a parent column that I write. And one of the things I say to parents is, I know this world is crazy, and I know there's a million different experts out there saying all sorts of things about how you're supposed to raise your kids, and if you don't do this, your kids are going to turn out bad. If you don't do that, you don't do this, you don't do that. You know, your kids, oh my gosh, right? And I say, listen, do you love your kids? And they go, yeah. I go, then work on that. You know, just keep remembering that you love your kids and keep sharing that love with your kids, and things are going to turn all right. You're going to find yourself doing more of the right things than the wrong things when you just focus on how much you love your kids. And that transfers over to how kind you are to the rest of the world. You know, if you focus on that, you're going to find yourself doing more of the right things than the wrong things. And I think you're going to be all right. And then maybe later some of that other stuff can come about. Maybe you find yourself reading a little bit more. Maybe you find yourself trying to write in a journal or diary or something like that. And it just slowly builds over the years. So start off with being a good person who's kind, who likes people, you know, who maybe loves people. And I think that you're going to be all right. You're going down the right path.
Yeah. And again, there's so much depth to what you say. I understand it from a much deeper human behavioral point of view as well, as to why that is so important. Because from a behavior point of view, we all come into a conversation and the people aren't even in the room, even though we're talking to them, because we're talking to probably our dad 20 years ago, because we're trying to prove ourselves. We're conditioned to think a certain way because of the bully in school 20 years ago. So we're having a conversation, live, present moment, but it's like we're not there. We're back 20 years ago, because we're still fighting our corner of, I'm trying to prove myself and all the rest of it. So you and I have done all of that, and we've got the ghosts in the cupboard. And now we're just ourselves, because we've been able to accept that and just, like you say, just have a plain and simple conversation about how I can be kind to somebody, rather than my ego in the room of, I have to prove myself, you know.
Absolutely. And I think the whole ego thing and the whole me, I mean, you know, we live in a world where, at least way back in the prehistoric days, we had to survive. You know, and a lot of that was me to survive. You know, if I could, maybe I couldn't outrun the saber-tooth tiger, but maybe I can outrun you. You know? So if I can outrun you, the saber-tooth tiger gets you, and I survive. So it's rooted in us, the me. Right? So, but what happens is, with that whole me rooted in us, we find ourselves thinking about ourselves way too much. And when we find ourselves thinking about ourselves way too much, many times we can't help but start dealing with those demons of our past that are still there. And we find ourselves getting depressed, you know, and when we get depressed, we're not our best person. You know, we're sad, we're depressed, we act angry, we lash out, we're mean, we're inconsiderate, we don't have time for others. You know, we bite back at somebody with cruel words, you know, that hurt. You know, we do all these things when we're thinking about me, which is natural to think me. I say that when you get there, when you find yourself being there, you know, when you're cognizant, when you're aware of yourself being there, and that's a skill too. You know, it comes down to thinking about your thinking, that metacognition that we talked about earlier. So when you're good at that metacognition, so start writing more and you'll get better at it. But when you're good at that metacognition and you catch your thoughts being in a bad place, then what happens is the number one thing you can do is to stop thinking about yourself and try to go help somebody else. And that's like the doctor's medicine. It's like the best thing that he could order. Stop thinking about yourself and go help somebody else. And then you'll find yourself automatically becoming happier when you do that. And that's the world we want to live in, you know, where people are happier, you know, when they're not always thinking about themselves and finding themselves in some dark places. You know, we want to be in a world that's good and kind and pleasant. And the best way to make that happen, and when people succeed, and the best way to make that happen is that you go out and you start helping somebody else, and you'll find yourself becoming the kind of person that you want to be and living in the kind of world that you want to live in.
And I think a big element of self-forgiveness, because I'm a mum living with 2 children, you know, they've been raising them by myself for 8 years and loving every minute of it. But there have been times where I've struggled, where I've gone back to being human. So I might snap, or I'll have an argument with them, or I'll be trying to prove myself, or I'll feel guilty about something. So I'm trying to, when you do that as a parent, you obviously over-parent and you don't manage the situation well. So what I've been able to do in being a coach and a parent at the same time is you start to hate yourself, thinking, oh, well, that's not very coach-like behaviors. But what I now do is I forgive myself. So I forgive myself in the moment where I know I've been a bad person, you know, not very effective and shouted, but it's getting the boundary that they do need that kind of someone to hold them to accountability. And sometimes you do have to raise your voice, but there are times where I go over the top, and then I just go back in and apologize, and I say, hey, this didn't work, and my son or daughter will go, well, that's okay, and I'll be like, well, no, it's not okay, because I did shout too much. So what I'm going to do in the future is X, Y, Z. So it's just being able to forgive yourself, but then put something in place so that next time you can either notice quicker, or they say something quicker, or whatever, so that nobody feels a victim about it. Because I think too often as a parent, you can be left feeling a victim when you go, oh, whoops, I've just been human again, and just shouted too much, or, you know, not being so nice just because I was in a mood or grouchy. Do you see what I mean? So you're still human, but then you've got to be as effective as possible in that situation.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, Rachel. And I got to tell you, you know, parenting is probably the toughest job out there. You know, and it gives you many, many opportunities on a daily basis to be humbled, you know, and to feel overworked and underappreciated, and all those things that start making you more human and flawed. So, and then that's a great opportunity. You know, it's like a training ground or a learning ground. It's a hard one. It's a difficult one where you're going to get bruised and battered a lot. You know, but that's what I love about what we do, Rachel. What we do is, you know, we're always trying to like read and speak and listen, and trying to like learn better ways of doing things and ways of helping people. And because we do that sort of thing, it helps us recognize a little quicker when we're falling off the straight line of living the kind of life that we want to live. And it also helps us, it keeps us engaged. It gives us the fuel, you know, it gives us the constant reminders of that this is how you're supposed to do it. This is the way you live your best life, is by doing these things. So hopefully we fall off, you know, that boat a fewer times than maybe somebody else. And when somebody else falls off, we help them. And in helping them, we also remind ourselves, you know, to stay on that straight line of where we want to be going in life, and creating the kind of high quality life we want to create for us and all of our people. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of funny, like, you know, like when people like me and you, we come out and we write these things or say these things or do these things, people think that, oh, you're an expert at that. And the funny thing is I still feel so weird when people call me the expert at that, because I'm like, I'm not the expert. I'm almost like doing this stuff to remind me to keep doing what I need to do, because if I don't remind me through my readings and writings and talkings with others and all the other stuff I do, then I'll fall off. You know, fall off that boat and start living a less than maximum life. You know what I'm saying? So that's the great thing about what we do, and the great thing I try to share with other people. When I say go out and help people, I'm hoping that at some point, you know, they catch the bug and they start doing the sort of things that me and you were doing, and they're going to find out that they get some of the benefits that me and you were getting, the constant reminders, you know, noticing it quicker, you know, maybe than other people notice it, because we've learned about that, you know, thinking about our thinking and stuff like that. So it's definitely a win-win. And again, and parenting's a great place to practice, because parenting is a tough battleground. You know, it's a great place to practice these sort of things, and you're going to fall down and get hurt a lot there.
Oh yeah, but you know, you learn quicker. You know, when I was going through coaching courses and my diploma program, and I would see other members of the group probably grasping things slower, because I was putting myself at stake every day, like you say, because you think about your thinking, and then you say your stuff, and then you take the actions, and then you make the mistakes. So it allows you to, like you say, it's not about us being perfect, but we just get back up quicker because we can recognize it quicker. And it's just that we're the experts in the sense that we've learned a load of models that we can talk about that other people can use, but we are still novices because we are still learning, but you know, sort of more expertise than we had previously. So I love speaking to someone who also puts themselves at stake every day and is willing to kind of go, what do I need to do to be a better person today? And the last element, the fourth part, is we look at insights and kind of future focus. Where are you going? So we've talked a lot about insights. I think that's kind of covered, but what would you say for future focus, Dan, where you're at? Are you going to continue teaching, or do you want to be more of an author, or what's that for you?
Well, I got to tell you, Rich, I'm very lucky where I've been an inner city school teacher for over 20 years, and I've got to coach sports and have a really good time doing it. And through my journeys over time, it took time, a lot of hard work, but I enjoyed the journey, which was really important. And over the years, I've become an award-winning author, speaker and teacher, and I've been able to do a lot of different things. I started off with teen leadership for teenagers, because that's who I was coaching and teaching with the teenagers. And then, eventually I ended up having 5 children of my own and got into parenting. So I have like parenting columns, teen leadership columns, and just leadership in general. And then I found myself, because I am a teacher, I found myself getting into the realm of education. And where I've been able to write some educational books. And, the American Federation of Teachers hired me to go on a speaking tour. So, I've been out speaking to teachers. Just spoke, I was just asked to come down to Washington, D.C. to speak to the nation's teachers. So I found myself with teens, I found myself with parents, and I found myself with teachers, which is a great place to be. And I've really been doing a lot of reflecting, Rachel, on where do I need to go next. And I'm sure I'm going to stay in the teaching world. I'm probably going to go into the school administration side to get a bigger picture of how our public educational system works, and maybe have a little more of influence over bigger numbers instead of just, let's say, just in my classroom of 30 students. You know what I'm saying? So I'll probably go that way. I'm probably going to continue to still do some stuff with teens, leadership, probably still do a few things with parenting and, of course, the educational world, the academia, educational world. But what I've been thinking about more and more, Rachel, was going back to my roots. And I'm like, how did I get started? The thing that dug me out of the hole that I was in, and that hole becomes a rut, if you stay there long enough. And if you stay there too long, that rut gets deeper and deeper, it becomes a grave, right? So the thing that dug me out of that was sports, youth sports. So I'm really reflecting and really thinking about how I can start going into that vein of, let's say, teen or youth sports, leadership in sports. I told you I've been an inner city school teacher in sport, a coach for over 20 years. I see kids with incredible athletic talents walking down those hallways that are not even playing. Instead they're running the streets. And that's so sad that they're running the streets. They may be caught up in the gang life. They may not believe in sports. They may not have the discipline to follow a coach that's yelling at them, barking orders at them. Maybe they don't have the grades to be eligible to play sports. But sports was what got me, out of my little rut. And I'm really wondering, how can I go back to that and say, what can I do for teen youth athletes? So I don't really know what the answer is yet, but I really feel that's going back to the beginning, for me. So I'm thinking about it, reflecting about it, and I'm hoping within the next few months, I'll start gaining some good insights on how to go through that, because that's what saved me. And our inner cities are a tough spot to be, a very tough spot to be. And I think sports, has helped tremendously. But how can we better that? How can we make it even better? How can we get kids in love with sports instead of gangs? You know what I'm saying? How can we get kids to stop saying it's not cool to do well in school? You know what I'm saying? They need to do well in school so they can play sports. And if we got to use sports as the crutch that gets them to do well in school and gets them to have better grades, then let's do it. Let's use sports to get them to have those good grades so maybe they can have a chance to get into college or do something with their lives after sports is over. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, that's the insight that I'm working on right now in my head and I'm tossing with. And I imagine eventually I'll probably have to start writing about it. And that will give me further insights on how to actually then take it into the community of, let's say the inner cities and get this whole thing about sports and leadership and, the work ethic and all those other things that sports teach them and make that a bigger deal for, let's say, our inner cities and get our kids in the inner cities in a on the right track and make our inner cities a better place. Because I think that the inner cities they're going to keep growing. You know, the urban population of America is going to keep growing. You know, cities are going to get bigger. So I think something needs to be done, and I think sports could be it. Plus, it'd be great for me because that would help me go back to the very beginning stages of my life and help me understand better who I am, which is a good thing, Rachel. Absolutely a good thing.
Full circle. And well, suggestion to you, I don't know whether you consider, but like actually going and speaking to some of the inner city sports coaches, or maybe going and speaking to when the guys and girls are practicing maybe in their little netball courts or whatever in the local neighborhoods, just going and having a quick chat with some of them and getting the word on the street of, okay, you guys are practicing. What had you practice and get into sports when you could have turned another way? And then maybe talking to some of the gangs that are on the streets and saying, what has you not get into sports or try it? And what would allow you to access that or see it maybe as an option? So just going and doing a survey of the local area.
Sounds like a great idea, Rachel. Thanks for the advice.
You're very, very welcome. And also maybe to try and start speaking to some more higher level profile sports stars who I'm sure you might know, who have come from the inner cities, who are maybe looked up to. And even a guy like Lewis Howes. Have you heard of Lewis Howes?
Yep.
Yeah, so he's very famous in the blogging social media world, and he's a big advocate obviously of sports, and then he got a sports injury and then he turned it to his advantage like we talk about, but obviously he went out of sports into business, but he loves his sports and he still tries out for different sports teams, and he's writing a book on manhood and what it is to really be a man and things like that. So he might be a really great advocate to go to, as to, well, you know, it's just worth a shot.
Absolutely. I'm going to start digging into that stuff. And sports is such a great foundation. It teaches you so many things. You know, there's something special about being a teammate. There really is. And about working hard for a common goal, you know, to try to win, try to improve your performance. And I think if we just take those things, you know, Rachel, I got to say, I mean, sports, and the other great team I was on was the military. You know, everybody working for a common goal as a team. You know, so between my youth sports and my military experience, you know, it taught me a lot of life lessons that I think our youth today can benefit from. So I think it's definitely something that we need to look at closer and see how can we take some of these lessons and apply them to, like, let's say, our inner city youth and help them, you know, maybe help them be involved, you know, in these sort of things. So it's definitely
youth, and I think that applies to everybody. I think it's youth and their parents, because whatever's going on with the parents is going on with the youth. So, you know, you need those role models, and I'm very proud of my children. I'm sure you're very proud of your children, but you put some hard work in being there for them and providing the role models. So I think it's not just a case to point to the youth. I think, you know, like all of us, all of those people out there not willing to put themselves on the line and say, what can I do to help and be better and be kind and all the rest of it. Anybody out there, I think it really does apply to.
And I totally agree with you, Rachel. Now, the Storm, the book I wrote, How Young Men Become Good Men, you know, that's about an inner city athlete and about the struggles he's facing, you know, teenager and all that. But to emphasize your point that you were just making, like, I get people emailing me from all over, you know, and they could be like an 83-year-old grandmother saying, I read your book, and I got to tell you that book is not just for teenagers. That book is for all of us. You know what I'm saying? And I get parents emailing me, you know, saying that they read the book and they're giving it to their kid and this and that. So I agree with you. I mean, you know, I know we said before, me and you do the things we do and it helps us improve and helps us help other people. But I really think that when we're out there with our message, whether it's our books or blogs or whatever it is, you know, we have like our niches where we put that in, you know, because we're trying to pinpoint that these people, it's really, really going to help. But the thing is, outside of those niches, those wider circles, there's tons and tons of people out there that will benefit from what we do, what we write, what we talk about, and, you know, basically what we coach. And I definitely encourage those people to start, to look at our stuff, not just our stuff, but everybody's stuff, of course, right? And to step up their game. And if they step up their game, then this world could be a great place to live in.
And obviously our stuff is great, but yeah, I want to take this as second in closing, Dan, just to say thank you so much. I do learn a lot when I do these leadership takeaways, but I've learned so much from you, and I really do want to thank you for spending this time with me, and hopefully some British audience that will listen on social media, but also from your audiences and people around the world. And thank you for what you do and what you contribute with the books. Like you say, although they might appear simplistic, they are so deep-rooted in human behavior and culture and the way we all work and the way things don't work. And thank you on behalf of everybody for contributing what you've contributed.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate the opportunity you gave me to be on your show and reach out to like the British audience. And I'd love the British audience to maybe contact me and say hello if they get a chance. They can find me on my website at granddaddysecrets.com or danblanchard.net. So definitely reach out to me and say hello, and I'll definitely say hello back to you. And so again, thank you, Rachel, for this opportunity.
You're very welcome. I loved having you, and yeah, have a nice rest of the day, and I'll speak to you soon.
You too, Rachel.
Cheers, Dan. Bye.